Hello, this is STARS lesson number 6. This story today will be one of my favorites. It's on the scholarship jacket by Marta Salinas. This could be either a STARS essay prompt. I've actually done this exact same lesson, non-related to STARS, but it does teach the point, make a claim, back it up, support it with text. So if you are watching the Zoom recording of this class because you wanted a little bit of extra practice, good for you. This is a great way to end the month of April. You do not have to come to class for your third week of April if you are doing the Zoom recording for the STARS. The STAR test is on April 19th for Coppell, April 25th for other school districts. So there are just a couple of kids who requested, hey, aren't we missing a lesson? And I was like, well, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, yes, but not Tuesday. So this is to give everyone else a chance. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with the scholarship jacket. The children used to, hold on. Okay, here we go. The Scholarship Jacket by Marta Salinas. The small Texas school that I went to had a tradition carried out every year during the 8th grade graduation. A beautiful gold and green jacket, the school colors, was awarded to the class valedictorian, the student who had maintained the highest grades for 8 years. The scholarship jacket had a big gold S on the left front side and your name written in gold letters on the pocket. My oldest sister, Rosie, had won the jacket a few years back, and I fully expected to also. I was 14 and in the 8th grade. I had been a straight A student since the 1st grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. My father was a farm laborer who couldn't earn enough money to feed 8 children, so when I was 6, I was given to my grandparents to raise. We couldn't participate in sports at school because there were registration fees, uniform costs, and trips out of town. So even though our family was quite agile and athletic, there would never be a school sports jacket for us. This one, the scholarship jacket, was our only chance. In May, close to graduation, spring fever had struck as usual with a vengeance. No one paid any attention in class. Instead, we stared out the windows and at each other, wanting to speed up the last few weeks of school. I despaired every time I looked in the mirror. Pencil thin, not a curve anywhere. I was called beanpole and string bee, and I knew that's what I looked like. A flat chest, no hips, and a brain. That's what I had. That really wasn't much for a 14-year-old to work with, I thought, as I absentmindedly wandered from my history class to the gym. Another hour of sweating in basketball and displaying my toothpick legs was coming up. Then I remembered. My PE shorts were still in a bag under my desk where I'd forgotten them. I had to walk all the way back and get them. Coach Thompson was a real bear if someone wasn't dressed for PE. She'd said I was a good forward and even tried to talk to Grandma into letting me join the team once. Of course, Grandma said no. I was almost back at my classroom door when I heard voices raised in anger, as if in some sort of argument. I stopped. I didn't want to eavesdrop. I just hesitated, not knowing what to do. I needed those shorts, and I was going to be late. But I didn't want to interrupt an argument between my teachers. I recognized the voices, Mr. Schmidt, my history teacher, and Mr. Boone, my math teacher. They seemed to be arguing about me. I couldn't believe it. I still remember the feeling of shock that rooted me flat against the wall, as if I were trying to blend in with the graffiti written there. I refuse to do it. I don't care who her father is. Her grades don't even begin to compare to Marta's. I won't lie or falsify records. Marta has a straight A+ average, and you know it. That was Mr. Schmidt, and he sounded very angry. Mr. Boone's voice sounded calm and quiet. Look, Joanne's father's not only on the board, he owns the only store in town. We could say it was a close tie, and the pounding in my ears drowned out the rest of the words. Only a word here and there filtered through. Marta is Mexican. Resign. Won't do it. Mr. Schmidt came rushing out, and luckily for me, went down the opposite way toward the auditorium, so he didn't see me. Shaking, I waited a few minutes and then went in and grabbed my bag and fled from the room. Mr. Boone looked up when I came in, but didn't say anything. To this day, I don't remember if I got in trouble in PE for being late or how I made it through the rest of the afternoon. I went home very sad and cried into my pillow that night so grandmother wouldn't hear me. It seemed a cruel coincidence that I had overheard that conversation. The next day, when the principal called me into his office, I knew what it would be about. He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it any easier for him, so I looked him straight in the eyes. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. Marta, he said, there's been a change in policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket. As you know, it's always been free. He cleared his throat and continued. This year, the board has decided to charge $15, which still won't cover the complete cost of the jacket. I stared at him in shock, and a small sound of dismay escaped my throat. I hadn't expected this. He still avoided looking in my eyes. So if you're unable to pay the $15 for the jacket, it will be given to the next one in line. I didn't need to ask who that was. Standing with all the dignity I could muster, I said, I'll speak to my grandfather about it, sir, and let you know tomorrow. I cried on the walk home from the bus stop. The dirt road was a quarter mile from the highway, so by the time I got home, my eyes were red and puffy. Where's Grandpa? I asked Grandma, looking down at the floor so she wouldn't ask me why I'd been crying. She was sewing on a quilt as usual and didn't look up. I think he's out back working in the bean field. I went outside and looked out in the fields. There he was. I could see him walking between the rows, his body bent over the little plants, hoe in hand. I walked slowly out to him, trying to think how I could best ask him for the money. There was a cool breeze blowing and a sweet smell of mesquite fruit in the air, but I didn't appreciate it. I kicked out a dirt clod. I wanted that jacket so much. It was more than just being a valedictorian and giving a little thank you speech for the jacket on graduation night. It represented 8 years of hard work and expectation. I knew I had to be honest with Grandpa. It was my only chance. He saw my shadow and looked up. He waited for me to speak. I cleared my throat nervously and clasped my hands behind my back so he wouldn't see them shaking. Grandpa, I have a big favor to ask you, I said in Spanish, the only language he knew. He still waited silently. I tried again. Grandpa, this year the principal said the scholarship jacket is not going to be free. It's going to cost $15, and I have to take the money in tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be given to someone else. The last words came out in an eager rush. Grandpa straightened up tiredly and leaned his chin on the hoe handle. He looked out over the field that was filled with the tiny green bean plants. I waited, desperately hoping he'd say I could have the money. He turned to me and asked quietly, what does a scholarship jacket mean? I answered quickly, maybe there was a chance. It means you've earned it by having the highest grades for 8 years, and that's why they're giving it to you. Too late, I realized the significance of my words. Grandpa knew that I understood it was not a matter of money. It wasn't that. He went back to hoeing the weeds that sprang up between the delicate little bean plants. It was a time-consuming job. Sometimes the small shoots were right next to each other. Finally, he spoke again as I turned to leave, crying. Then if you pay for it, Marta, it's not a scholarship jacket, is it? Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. I walked back to the house and locked myself in the bathroom for a long time. I was angry with grandfather, even though I knew he was right, and I was angry with the board, whoever they were. Why did they have to change the rules just when it was my turn to win the jacket? Those were the days of belief and innocence. It was a very sad and withdrawn girl who dragged into the principal's office the next day. This time he did look me in the eyes. What did your grandfather say? I sat very straight in my chair. He said to tell you he won't pay the $15. The principal muttered something I couldn't understand under his breath and walked over to the window. He stood looking out at something outside. He looked bigger than usual when he stood up. He was a tall, gaunt man with gray hair, and I watched the back of his head while I waited for him to speak. Why? He asked finally. Your grandfather has the money. He owns a 200-acre ranch. I looked at him, forcing my eyes to stand dry. I know, sir, but he said if I had to pay for it, then it wouldn't be a scholarship jacket. I stood up to leave. I guess he'll just have to give it to Joanne. I hadn't meant to say that. It had just slipped out. I was almost to the door when he stopped me. Martha, wait. I turned and looked at him, waiting. What did he want now? I could feel my heart pounding loudly in my chest and see my blouse fluttering where my breast should have been. Something bitter and vile tasting was coming up in my mouth. I was afraid I was going to be sick. I didn't need any sympathy speeches. He sighed loudly, went back to his desk. He watched me biting his lip. Okay, we'll make an exception in your case. I'll tell the board. You'll get your jacket. I could hardly believe my ears. I spoke in a trembling rush. Oh, thank you, sir. Suddenly, I felt great. I didn't know about adrenaline in those days, but I knew something was pumping through me, making me feel as tall as the sky. I wanted to yell, jump, run the mile, do something. I ran out so I could cry in the hall where there was no one to see me. At the end of the day, Mr. Schmidt winked at me and said, I hear you're getting a scholarship jacket this year. His face looked as happy and innocent as a baby's, but I knew better. Without answering, I gave him a quick hug and ran to the bus. I cried on the walk home again, but this time because I was so happy. I couldn't wait to tell Grandpa and ran straight to the field. I joined him in the road where he was working, and without saying anything, I crouched down and started pulling up the weeds with my hands. Grandpa worked alongside me for a few minutes, and he didn't ask what happened. After I had a little pile of weeds between the rows, I stood up and faced him. The principal said he's making an exception for me, Grandpa, and I'm getting the jacket after all. That's after I told him what you said. Grandpa didn't say anything. He just gave me a pat on the shoulder and a smile. He pulled out the crumpled red handkerchief that he always carried in his back pocket and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Better go see if your grandmother needs any help with supper. I gave him a big grin. He didn't fool me. I skipped and ran back to the house, whistling some silly tune. Okay. So just something you probably didn't notice. The main character's name is Martha. Look at the author's name, Marta Salinas. You kind of wonder if this is, a little bit about her story or something that happened, because obviously we have something really unfair taking place here. We have Marta, the main character, the protagonist in the story, worthy of winning the scholarship jacket. She's put in 8 years of hard work. And it's about politics, and it's about knowing people, and it's about the fact that she's poor. They want to give the jacket to the second person, who just happens to be a rich young lady whose dad, owns the town, basically. So the author purposely intended readers to walk away with a message about the human condition. And I think even in my youngest kids understand that sometimes life isn't fair. So maybe you were a little mad that this situation was put upon this, obviously wonderful, honest young lady. All writers have a reason for telling their story, and they often provide an explanation on what can happen in real life and to good people. So, what is a theme? Well, a simple definition is the meaning or message the author wanted the reader to feel by the end of the story. It can be explicitly stated or implied. And in this case, there was no explicitly stated, it wasn't fair. All of this was implied. So how do you determine if a theme of a story? Well, you identify the main conflict in the story. And the conflict here is, it's a political conflict. The scholarship jacket is rightfully Marta's. She's earned it. But for political reasons, they want to give the jacket to the second person in line. What epiphany or understanding does the protagonist learn? What is the revelation? I think this was clear in the story. Everybody, when her grandpa asks her the question, what is the scholarship jacket? And Marta replies, well, it's something they give to you after you earn it, and it's free. And as soon as it comes out of her mouth, she realizes how wise her grandfather is. And the revelation here is she shouldn't have to pay for it. She's already earned it. Look for ways the main character changed from the beginning of the story to the end. I think Marta was innocent and naive at the beginning of the story, believing if you do the right thing, if you work hard, your efforts will pay off. And it worked for her sister, so she assumed it would work for her too. I think this happens in real life to, adults even. They work hard, and they try to get a promotion, and it's given to someone else, and they're doing everything right. And maybe, they're not as popular, or maybe, they don't have somebody in the company that helped them, a contact in the company. So unfortunately, what happened to Marta in the story does happen in real life all the time. Look for key phrases or sentences. And this is when you go back into the document. And this is why STAR is wanting kids to go back and look for textual references. Find the proof in the story that showed you that. So we're going to do that here in a minute. Look for any repetition of words or ideas. Is there a big idea in the story? Yeah. Fairness. Does the setting reveal anything? School setting. Not always fair in schools. So which of the best following, I'm going to the guided questions, which of the following best identifies a major theme of this story? A, it is best to focus on one's education without worried about recognition. B, being an American means acting with respect for hard work and justice. C, one should respect the wisdom of elders when solving problems. D, it is difficult but important to stand up for what is fair and right. It's D. My favorite part of this story is when she looks that principal right in the eyes, and he is clearly not happy that he's been put in this compromising position. He doesn't want to take the scholarship jacket away from her, to be clear. And I've worked in the school. Your principal answers to someone else higher. Your principal answers to the school board. They answer to the superintendent. The principal is not the head guy. He has a lot of power and clout over the school, but there are other political forces at play here. So I love that she stood up and looked him in the eye. That was kind of one of my favorite parts. Which quote from the text best supports the answer to question 1? I had been a straight A student since the first grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. My father was a farm laborer who couldn't earn enough money to feed 8 children. So when I was 6, I was given to my grandparents to raise. It was more than just being a valedictorian and given a little thank you speech for the jacket on graduation night. It represented 8 hours of hard work and expectation. Then if you pay for it, Marta, it's not a scholarship jacket, is it? Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. Major theme in this story here. What quote do you think? If you pay for it, it's not a scholarship jacket. That was the message. You shouldn't have to pay for something you've earned. In paragraph 8 and paragraph 10, why is it significant that the principal cannot look Marta in the eye? It reveals that he knows what he's doing is wrong and he's ashamed, A. B, it reveals he's blind to justice and does not believe he's doing anything wrong. C, it reveals he's actually distracted by more important things than who gets the jacket. D, it reveals he doesn't care about the scholarship, what the scholarship jacket means to Marta. Obviously, it's A. I actually like the fact that he was upset about it. He didn't want to do it. It showed that he had compassion for Marta and he realized it was wrong. How do Marta's feelings change over the course of the story? Cite evidence from the 3 examples in the story. So I did this. At the beginning of the story, my oldest sister Rosie had won the jacket a few years back, and I fully expected to do so. I was 14 and in the 8th grade. I'd been a straight A student since the 1st grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. Okay, so she's innocent and naively believes she did the work. She will receive the jacket. The middle of the story. Grandpa, this year, the principal said the scholarship jacket is not going to be free. It's going to cost $15. Oh, sorry. And I have to take the money in tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be given to someone else. This is that climax of the story. This is the curveball. Like, what? And this is where Grandpa's wisdom comes into play. And the end of the story, I don't know if you understood what the principal did, everybody, but he countermanded whatever he was told. He was told not to give her the jacket, and he couldn't do it. because she faced him, because she called him out, really. This isn't fair. I recognize it's not fair. Give it to Joanne. Go ahead. He couldn't do it. So the principal said, he's making an exception for me, Grandpa, and I'm getting the jacket after all. That's after I told him what you said. The principal got the message. The grandfather was calling him out, saying, I know what you're doing. It's not okay, and it's not fair. How did the principal's point of view towards Marta change throughout the story? He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it easier for him. So I looked him straight in the eyes. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. This is that first encounter in the office. Marta, he said, there's been a change in policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket. As you know, it's always been free. This year, the board has decided to charge $15. If you're unable to pay, it will be given to the next in line. So I think it's actually pretty good that Marta heard those two teachers arguing, because she wasn't taken by surprise. I think she handled it perfectly the way she should have handled it. So I'm pretty glad that she had that warning. The second encounter is Grandpa says he won't pay the $15. He wanted the grant. He didn't want to make the decision. If he paid the $15, he gets out scot-free. Now he's forced to make a decision, and he's forced to make the right decision. So I love that part. Okay, so here's your prompt today. In the short story, The Scholarship Jacket, a young girl, Marta, has worked hard to earn the coveted award and should receive the scholarship jacket. However, politics and favoritism almost caused someone else to be given the jacket, even when they did not deserve it. She did not deserve it. So your job is to explain how you were able to determine the theme of the story and what message the author, Marta Salinas, was trying to reveal by depicting specific scenes in the story. Okay, the word you means you get to write in first person, which is always a lot more fun for students. So the thesis will always restate what they're asking you to write about. So let me give you an idea on the next page. So let me scroll down and you'll have this. I'm going to give you the link. So here's an example of a topic sentence. Throughout this story, The Scholarship Jacket by Marta Salinas, I was able to see how the author depicted specific scenes to reveal her message, which I believe was a person should be rewarded when they earn it. So your topic sentence should name the theme. What was the theme? Now back it up. First of all, Marta has achieved the highest level of academic success for 8 years and is the top student. The scholarship jacket has always been awarded to the student with the highest grades in all those schools, in all those years. Then you're going to back it up with text. The story showed how Marta expected to receive this honor, as shown with the words, my oldest sister Rosie had won the jacket a few years back, and I fully expected to do so. I was 14. In the 8th grade, I'd been a straight A student since the 1st grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. She knew it was hers. Okay, so that's the only time in the outline I have given you 1, 2, and 3 all the way through. Okay. This is the first sign of the author's message. As it is clear, Marta has done all the work to receive the award. So the author sets up the stage and the tone with, this young girl has done everything right. She's worked hard. She should receive the honor. It should be hers. Okay. Second of all, Marta overhears a conversation between 2 teachers, which makes her question whether or not doing the work will be enough, or if the jacket will be given to another student who has a wealthy family with prestige in the community. Wow. Wow. This is a curveball. This is a curveball for anybody. I should receive the honor, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. So I love that. This is the warning. Why did the author put this scene in? I didn't write it down. This is wonderful. This is Marta having a heads up. She has time to process this. She has time to go home, cry about it, think about it, and realize this is terrible. This is unjust. This is not fair. But think about what happens in the principal's office. She's able to look him in the eye and go, This is not okay. So I love that. Third, when Marta is called to the principal's office, she's faced with the reality that she will be forced to pay $15 for the jacket, and she knows what her grandpa will say. What's really interesting is I think when she went into the principal's office, sorry, I have a tickle. I think she thought he was going to say, you're not going to get the jacket. So when he said, you're going to have to pay $15, she was like, yes. And then she was like, no. Like, oh, there's a chance. But no, there's not a chance because I know my grandpa will never do it. So I want you to think about this. Did the principal know when he set that $15 that the grandpa wasn't going to pay it? Probably. They probably set this up knowing that Joanne was going to get it because the grandpa's not going to pay. So I believe Marta knew all along where this was going to go. And maybe hoping that the principal would do the right thing, but probably feeling they wouldn't. So in my opinion, the theme was clearly expressed by the author to show, even though there are circumstances where life can be unfair, when Martha bravely stood up for herself and her grandpa's beliefs in front of the principal, she forced him to do the right thing. So I guess the takeaway from this, ladies and gentlemen, is maybe we all need to be a little bit like Marta. When we've done the work, when we've earned the right, we have to stand up and advocate for ourselves and make sure that our voice is heard. So I love that. I love that. And maybe that's a message. That's a theme. So whatever you think the theme is, you don't have to pick mine. You don't. You make a claim. What do you think Marta Salinas was trying to say? What was her message? Because clearly she had something to say. Take any 3 events in the story and use textual references to support your claim. That's all you do. Okay? All right. This ends STAR lesson number 6. This is the last and final STAR lesson. In May, we will start something new. So once again, if you are watching the video before Tuesday, April 19th, and you have done lesson 4, lesson 5, and now lesson 6, you do not have to come to class next week for your 3rd class. I will be doing this same lesson. All right. Thank you all for watching. Best of luck on the test. And those of you who are taking the extra time to do this before the test, I applaud you because preparation matters. And if it helps you just a little bit, get a few more answers correct, then you absolutely did the right thing in preparation. And have a great weekend.